Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished entrepreneur from the world of travel, Vandana Vijay from Pune, India. Vandana, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Mr. Garg. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Vandana is the founder and chief executive officer of Offbeat Tracks. So, Vandana, before we talk about Offbeat Tracks, tell me a little bit about your own amazing journey in brief and what was your inspiration to start Offbeat Tracks?
Sure. I think this story has to go back to my childhood and my upbringing.
Mhm.
I am from a defense family where my father and grandfather both were in the Indian Army, and I had the privilege of growing up all over India. Being an army officer's daughter, I've spent, we kept moving every couple of years, and the fascination for the mountains and especially the Himalayas probably started when I did 2 years of my schooling, which was class 6 and 7 in Srinagar.
Mm.
Um, I then went on to do my master's in microbiology in Hyderabad, but there was always this inkling to don the uniform like everybody at home.
Mm.
I took the All India UPSC CDS exam. I came first in All India merit
Oh.
for the UPSC CDS, but my family had particular reservations with me joining the army back then, primarily because permanent commission wasn't there for women as yet, and joining the army mandated a 10-year bond, which seemed too long. I then decided to not join the army. I took attempts at for the civil services after that. Unfortunately, I think something was wrong with my strategy and preparation, and I couldn't clear the exam. Thereafter, I went on to join Facebook. I worked with Facebook for 3 years, which was in 2013 to 16. But I think the seed of inception for Offbeat Tracks happened during that period.
Oh,
This
wonderful.
was May 2014, wherein I took 2 weeks off from work and I went to volunteer with a nonprofit in Ladakh.
Mm.
Now, May 2014 was very significant because if we go back to exactly 10 years from where we are today, it was the Modi wave which was
Yeah.
engulfing the entire country.
Mm.
And I was going from Hyderabad to Ladakh, and what Ladakh today is today was very different 10 years ago.
Mm.
We did not have internet communication. We did not have anything going on.
Mm.
Um, and that was a particularly late winter year. So, for people who are not aware of the geographical location of Ladakh, Ladakh is a high altitude cold desert,
Mm.
which is connected to the rest of mainland India through two strategic passes.
Mm.
One is the Rohtang Pass, which is on your Manali axis, and the other one is the Zojila Pass, which is from your Kashmir axis. Now, these passes are closed for about 6 to 8 months a year, and in that brief period when they're open, the entire region depends on winter stocking from the mainland.
Mm.
Now, what really struck me when I went in May to Ladakh was the passes hadn't opened as yet.
Mm.
Now, when the rest of the country was only talking about Modi and the transformation,
Mm.
the concerns were very different there. I remember every morning our conversation would be, has Rohtang opened? Has
Mm.
Zojila opened? Our food supplies were expiring by a week. I remember flying into Leh Airport, and the carousel belt of the plane had sacks of tomatoes and potatoes, which were being floated
Mm.
from the mainland.
Mm. Mm.
So, what really struck me from that visit was that how diverse and beautiful our country is.
Mm.
And I wanted to build something by which people actually see how unique our country is. We are one of the most diverse nations in the world.
Absolutely. Mm.
And I wanted people to see what the real life is. I
Mm.
personally believe that travel is a great teacher.
I agree.
And travel has to be in its native, innate, and raw sense. And
Mm.
I think starting Offbeat Tracks as a platform by which we could showcase the cultural diversity of India to Indians as well as the world, I owe a lot to that not maiden, but actually my second trip to Ladakh in 2014.
How wonderful. How wonderful. And I must mention that, you and I have something in common. You and I are both army brats.
Oh, how lovely.
My father was also a very senior and highly decorated army brigadier.
How lovely. My father was a brigadier and my grandfather was a lieutenant general.
Wow. Wonderful. So let's talk a little bit, Vandana, about Offbeat Tracks.
Sure.
Tell me a little bit about what is Offbeat Tracks? What are you doing differently?
Absolutely. Um, again, here, when I looked at conventional travel in the country and the way it's designed, one is, of course, you've got the mass tourism market where you are bundled up into a group of maybe 10, 20, 30 people. And, say you want to do a trip to Kashmir. You're going to fly into Srinagar. They do Srinagar, Gulmarg, Sonmarg, Pahalgam. It's literally getting stuff
Yeah.
taken off your list. For people coming into India from abroad, they assume India is in the north is Delhi, Agra, Jaipur, your Golden Triangle,
Yeah.
or they do Goa, or they go for your Ayurvedic retreats to Kerala. But as a lot of us are aware, there is so much more to India.
Correct.
Also, when you are traveling in a city in India, if you're cocooned with a bunch of same people and you're just sticking, stuff off your list, or what I see for the international tourist is you have a very isolated experience. You have a very insulated travel experience where you're sitting in your air conditioned car, you're going to a luxurious hotel, you're probably getting down, going to a place, just having a photo op and coming back. But are you actually getting to interact with
Correct.
people in the real sense of what it is? And
Hmm.
that's what I wanted to build with Offbeat Tracks.
Hmm.
So,
Fascinating.
coming back to the same example of, say, a Kashmir. I will not give you Srinagar with Shalimar and Nishat. I mean, you'll do that, but I'll say, why don't we do a heritage walk through the bylanes of Srinagar? Why don't we meet the coppersmiths who are building that? Or why don't we go to the home of a local artisan and understand the story of your Kashmir? Why don't we go to the home of a local family and sit down and have a Kashmiri Vazwan meal together? So the essence of Offbeat Tracks is to understand a place through its people and keep the travel experience as local and grounded as possible.
Oh, wonderful. Maybe one of these days we'll become one of your clients and do a trip with you.
It'd be my honor.
So tell me now, when you decide to select a new destination, what are the criteria that you use?
A couple of ways I look at it. One is market demand also, because you cannot solve for demand and supply both together. So we will generally pick destinations where there is enough buzz or tourism activity already there. So, for instance, I picked a Kashmir. When I started off, I picked a Kashmir, Ladakh, Sikkim, and Bhutan. Two reasons for that. One is there was enough demand for the destination, and also I had extensively traveled across these destinations myself. So when I'm selecting a destination, we work with in select destinations across the country and few in Southeast Asia. But these have involved me meticulously traveling to these destinations, researching the places, looking at offbeat experiences. Say in 2022, I spent 40 days in a village close to Manali called as Jagatsuk. Then spent another 40 days traveling across Ladakh for the fifth time. So it's me going there, identifying, experiencing, meeting local stakeholders and vendors, and curating experiences. What I tell my local vendors, which are mostly entrepreneurs in villages, is you do what you do. I'm just going to package it and showcase it to the world.
Well said. Well said. My next question is that, when I was reading about you and, preparing for my conversation with you, I was fascinated to read, that you work on preserving indigenous knowledge and traditions. Tell me a little bit about how do you preserve this and how do you incorporate it into your, itineraries?
Sure. So when you look at travel, I'd like to componentize travel into the following elements. One is your mode of transport and how you get there and how you're going to get around. The other is your stays. The third would be your experiences, which could be a sightseeing or activities. And the fourth is food. Now, let me start backwards first.
Yeah.
Food is one of the most important components of travel, and food is also a very important cultural identity to a region. There is a reason why barley is a staple in, say, the highlands of Ladakh, versus why maybe wheat is preferred as a staple in the Indo-Gangetic belt, and if you come further down south, it becomes rice. So I encourage my guests to eat as local as possible. It would be something in terms of an experience where you go into the home of a local family and eat local. We tell our villagers also, when you're hosting people, they get very enamored and they'll bring Coke or they'll bring bottles of fruity from the city. And I'm like, don't do that. If dessert in Ladakh is a dried apricot soaked overnight, your fresh butter, let's do that. So my little way by which I'm able to conserve indigenous practices is by making people eat local, also understand why you're eating what you're eating where you are.
Hmm.
Something small like maybe purchasing your souvenirs.
Hmm.
How many of you actually know the story behind the Pashmina shawl?
Hmm.
Everyone by default assumes that the Pashmina is something which is from Kashmir. But the Pashmina goat is reared by the Changpa nomads who are in high altitude Ladakh.
Mhm.
So that story, to understand why something comes, what is the ancient history that has brought it along.
Hmm.
So we want those stories to be told to people, and there are very few people who are actually working towards conserving and preserving these stories, and we want those people to be the faces of Offbeat Tracks who tell people about this.
How wonderful. How wonderful. My next question is that, there is a lot of discussion going on, not just in India, but outside India also, on over tourism in a
Absolutely.
lot of, and I'm seeing this happening in, my wife and I are very, very serious travelers around, not just in India, but around the world. How do you address the issue of over tourism to some of the more popular travel destinations within our country?
I think this is a problem which all of us in the industry, and especially when we are not in the market space of mass tourism,
Hmm.
are extremely worried about.
Hmm.
Case in point again being Kashmir. It's ridiculously expensive. Flight tickets, hotel prices are skyrocketing.
Hmm.
So I think that's where the endeavor of promoting offbeat destinations to the discretionary customer comes in.
Hmm.
I'll give you a Gurez instead of a Gulmarg, Somar, Pahalgam.
Hmm.
I'll
Hmm.
give you a village close to Lahore instead of just doing conventional Manali.
Hmm.
So I think it's a very hard and challenging job for us as bespoke itinerary curators or offbeat destination providers, wherein we have to constantly keep going and researching places
Hmm.
which are not, would you say, sworn by mass tourists. But I also feel something has to be done by stakeholders who are in the place of policy making, wherein we see how we don't let fragile ecosystems get ruined.
Hmm.
Bhutan has implemented a sustainable developmental fee, wherein you pay a certain amount, which becomes a natural barrier to prevent mass tourism. I
Hmm.
don't know what can be done in the Indian segment, what can be done in the Indian market,
Hmm.
but this is
Hmm.
definitely a problem that we're also facing.
Hmm. The other aspect, Vandana, is the whole issue of preserving so many of our heritage sites.
Also,
And sometimes, we as travelers can be a little careless, when we visit a lot of our cultural heritage sites. Give me an example of how you are helping to manage a lot of these sites and ensure sustainability within these areas.
I think we kind of go one step behind is where we're creating that awareness.
Hmm.
How many of us are aware in our cities about the cultural heritage and historic heritage of what our cities
Correct.
have?
Hmm.
I moved to Pune in 2020. I'm originally from Hyderabad and I started the business from Hyderabad.
Hmm.
Um, we worked on organizing a lot of heritage walks and tours wherein people got to learn the history of Hyderabad and Secunderabad are twin cities.
Yeah.
Hyderabad has the history of the Kulu Qutub Shahi dynasty, the Nizams, whereas Secunderabad developed as a garrison by the British for protection of the Nizams. So to
Hmm.
understand that history, understand that culture and heritage. So we are at that step where we're creating that awareness. We did a bicycling tour to Kashmir last year, where
Hmm.
it was fascinating to see these ruins called as Burzhama.
Hmm.
Ruins from, I think they're from the Neolithic time.
Hmm.
Just lying there, the Archaeological Survey of India has just put a little barricade around it, and the kids were playing cricket next door.
Hmm.
So I think the step where we contribute as a company is to kind of create and generate that awareness, bring
Right.
about the knowledge with the people, and
Hmm.
then hopefully once there is enough mass awareness created, decision makers can work significantly on promoting and conserving these places.
Well said. Uh, Vandana, you also speak about incorporating adventure and exploration into travel experiences. Give me an example of maybe one of your specially curated experiences like this.
Absolutely. Um, this is something which we started about 2 or 3 years ago. I started as a customer and then I took it as a partner.
Hmm.
I'm an avid cyclist. I'm very, very fond of cycling.
Mhm.
And in 2022, I embarked on an experience where we e-bicycled from Leh to Siachen base camp and back.
Wow. Hmm.
Um, Ever since I have, rode onto a cycle and sat in the saddle,
Hmm.
the whole essence of travel, when you're traveling and you're traveling at a slower pace, you're open to the elements, and you're stopping and, experiencing the way life goes on in the villages, it completely changes your travel experience. So I think that's the adventure. I led a group in 22 December, where we cycled from Nagaland to Manipur. And we did the festivals. So we did the Hornbill Festival in Nagaland, and then we did the Sengai Festival in Manipur. We cycled to Loktak Lake, where we stayed on the floating islands for a few minutes in homestays. So the adventurous bit of it was, of course, we were cycling all over. Wherever possible, we do little village hikes, little treks. For some more adventurous, we probably do overnight treks and camps. So I like the travel to be very active for whoever can do it. And I assure this to everyone, once you hop onto a bicycle, there's no other way you'd want to travel.
Correct. Well said. And what role do you believe such experiential travel plays in fostering cultural understanding, between the... Okay.
Immense. And cultural understanding is two ways. Now, as a tourist, when you go into a village on a bicycle, you are met by a bunch of curious eyes, right? The kids of the village are going to come running to you. The locals are going to come. I remember it was e-bicycles in Nagaland. They were actually, even in Kashmir, they were fascinated looking at e-bicycles. And, store owners would come with specifics that ye kitna deti hai, ek charge pe kitna chalti hai. So that's cross-cultural interaction. But as tourists for us, we're doing things like we are cycling to the villages of the region. We're staying in homestays run by local families of the region. We are sitting and having sit-down meals. An instance in Loktak where we took a boat to the island of Karang, which is one of the largest islands in Loktak Lake. And there was a local fisherman's home wherein we had organized a lunch. You're sitting with the family, he's feeding you fresh catch off the lake, and you're having local Manipuri food with them. Experiencing the festivals as we were there. So there's so much cross-cultural interaction which is happening in both ways. I want to talk about an experience which was in 2017, wherein I led a group of 14 travelers who came in from the US. And there is a village called as Takmachik in Ladakh. This village is on the Batalik axis. So traditionally, a Ladakhi village is built in such a way that the main village is on the banks of the river. Then you've got these peripheral little hamlets called as dokchas. That's usually used by the locals for their pastoral land, and they've got little houses there. So our endeavor was that we spent 5 days in the village, in the local homestays, and we solar electrified 10 homes and a monastery that were completely off the grid. Now, of course, it was great for the locals because we got them lights, we stayed at the homestay, we paid them. But the cross-cultural aspect was for the people from California coming in, wherein they said it was such a humbling experience for them to understand how life can be so happy, so bountiful, despite living in a land with such limited and scarce resources. Things that people, and you're coming from California, which is probably the most developed of any place in the world. I think what they absolutely love the fact that they're interconnected with this nature and how people are so happy and how material wealth is not the most important and those intangibles. So I love the fact that during that experience, my guests could only speak English. My host could only speak Hindi or Ladakhi. The children were the people who were forming the connect because the kids could speak some English. And those intangible bonds that were formed at that experience was something which I think both communities will take back forever.
Wonderful. How wonderful. Thank you. What a great story. So I have time for 2 more questions for you. What are some of the upcoming destinations and experiences that Offbeat Tracks is excited to offer? And are you looking at something outside India?
Yes. I'll answer your second question first, and then I'll lead my answer first. So we do all of Southeast Asia. So we do Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand.
Okay.
We also do Turkey abroad. I was looking at launching Central Asia, the stans, but it depends. I need to go make a trip and do some research. But I've always been fascinated by the Silk Route. So very soon we will be an offbeat tour traversing the Silk Route. But to answer your first question, every destination in India has so much more to explore. And as we said, we take you off the beaten path. So for instance, if you're doing a Kashmir, I'll encourage you to you to do the Bangus Valley, the Lolab Valley, or the Gurez Valley. You might have to rough it out in terms of accommodation a little bit, but the experiences you have will be like none other. Bhutan again. Um, last year, there's a trail across Bhutan called the Trans-Bhutan Trail, which was in disuse and was opened up about 60, 70 years later. We're proudly one of the very few, if not the only company that takes guests on the Trans-Bhutan Trail. This is a trekking trail which extends from western to eastern Bhutan and was used by people back in the day before roads came in the country. So what I say is every destination, we will give you an experience which is off the map and out of the ordinary.
Wow. And my last question, and this is, it's been so fantastic listening to you about all these adventures. What happens to the older people who want to go with the Offbeat Tracks, but don't have the energy to be able to have all these adventures?
Oh, and that's, I think, our USPs. We tailor make this and curate things based on people's energy levels, likes and dislikes. So maybe the older lot might not want to cycle across, but we'll give you a small little heritage walk around the place. Experiences are not age specific. Our experiences are not energy dependent. Our experiences are based on what your curiosity asks for. And what I tell my guests is, you tell me what you want to do, where you want. If you don't know where you want to do it, you just tell me what you want to do and leave the rest to me.
Fantastic.
We'll ensure that everything is tied in together and you come back richer with a whole bunch of experiences.
How wonderful. And on that note, Vandana, thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey. I mean, I instantly connected with you the moment you said you are an army, you have an army background. Thank you for speaking to me about Offbeat Tracks. It was fascinating to listen to such amazing things that you are doing in just making a lot of people discover our own country. And what's even more exciting is a lot of our viewers and listeners that can not just look at discovering our country, but also a lot of neighboring countries. And believe me, there is a lot to see and learn from each of these countries. Thank you for speaking to me and good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.